right, everyone, we're back. Make sure you have your cameras on, please. Alright guys, if you guys have any questions, drop them out in the chat. Make sure you have your cameras on, please. I see a lot of people without cameras. Alright. The YouTubers, good morning. If you have any questions, drop them in the YouTube chat. Zoomers, good morning. Alright, so one quick second. I just noticed something wrong here on Zoom. Okay. All right, cool. So today we're going to go over property management. The part of property management itself is not heavily tested in the salesperson exam, but the leasing portion has a few questions. So I'm going to skim through a few things, and then I'm going to go in detail in others. Okay. So management functions. If you want to be a property manager, one of the main functions that you have to that you guys have is reporting, budgeting. Obviously, the renting could be you, or it could be a leasing agent. We're going to talk about it. It could be property maintenance, construction, and even risk management, as we addressed in the previous chapter, right? Property management is a specialty within the real estate profession, and many states require, this is why I have it in yellow, many states require persons who manage real estate on behalf of other persons or entities to be licensed as real estate brokers. So not all property managers need to have a license. So the key is, are you working on behalf of other persons, or are you working on behalf of your boss? And you're probably thinking, well, a boss is another person, it's not me, right? So what defines you working for another person for compensation is, do you have a firm that works on behalf of another party? So for instance, if you hire me as a salary employee, I'm an extension of you, right? So being an extension of the owner, I represent the owner directly, therefore no license is needed. I'm an employee, right? If I open up a company to do property management, or if I provide independent services to 2, 3, 4, 5 different owners of buildings, then I might need a license, a real estate license. So that varies from state to state. As there are many states, they require this this license. Okay. Now other states license such persons specifically as property managements, and real estate firms that handle the sale of commercial and investment properties, are in a natural position to manage those properties for their owners. Now, some property managers work for firms that manage multiple properties under the blanket of management contracts. Others are independent agents. Some are employees of the owner, and they generally fall into one of the categories. If you're an individual property manager, usually a real estate broker who manages for one or more owners may belong to a small management firm devoted to full-time property management, be self-employed, or be one of the several managers in the large real estate firm. Individual building manager usually manages a single large property, may be employed by a property manager or directly by an owner, and may or may not need a real estate license, as I was saying before. A resident manager, right, for residential properties only, lives on the property and may be employed by a real estate broker or managing agents or owner to manage a property on part-time or full-time basis. May be required by law. By state law for properties of certain sizes and types. Now, a manager has a fiduciary relationship with the principal and, in general, is charged with producing the greatest possible net return on the owner's investment while safeguarding the value of the investment for the owner. Now, question, guys. What is a fiduciary relationship? Who can tell me? Drop it in the chat real quick. What is a fiduciary relationship? Fiduciary relationship. All right. Let's see. Let's go to the chat real quick. All right. We have cold. We have a financial relationship. Okay. Anybody else? Lula says cold. Bruno, figure that out. You should know what cold is. Celine, why financial relationship? Alexa says a relationship where you trust on someone with fiduciary duty. So a fiduciary relationship, right, is where you have a fiduciary duty. So I guess I'm trying to figure out what does fiduciary mean. All right, Yanita says care, obedience, accounting. Okay. Then we have Lula, care, obedience, accounting, loyalty, and disclosure. Perfect. So cold. When you have a fiduciary relationship, okay, perfect. We're getting somewhere. Trust. And Jackie, good morning. She says completely loyal to principal. So what we're trying to say here is, let me go back to this one. All right, so relationship where you put trust on someone with fiduciary duty. Okay, so that means that you hired someone, right? And they owe you a fiduciary duty, which is care, obedience, accounting, loyalty, and disclosure. They trust you so much. Right? That they tell you things, right? They'll say stuff that's confidential, and you have to be loyal enough to not give out that information, right? It's almost like your best friend telling you a secret, right? And then you put it all over Facebook. But that's pretty much what it is. Fiduciary relationships is putting your client first. That means somebody hired you. The seller, the buyer, it does not matter. Somebody hired you, and you have to put the client first. In this case, the manager, something got into my eye. In this case, the manager A property manager was hired by whom? By the landlord, right? So the landlord hired the property manager. Therefore, a fiduciary relationship was created with the principal. Who's the principal? The landlord, the one that hired you. All right. So pretty much at this point, our main goal, as it says here, is to do its best for the owner. In this case, give the highest net return, so return to the pocket, as possible. Good morning, Tiana. How are you? Tough day, I can tell. All right. And also try to maintain the value or increase the value of the property, right? Without damaging the property in any way. And also making sure that the tenants are happy, because when it's property management, right, there are tenants. When there are tenants, right, there has to be a good relationship so the tenants don't leave, pretty much, right? Jackie, chapter 24. We're on chapter 24. All right. Hey, Valerie, good morning. How are you? Sam, you don't have to yell at me. Good morning. I see you there too. You're in the dark, but I can see you. And Alexis too, yelling at me. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I love when people yell at me right on the Monday morning. That's it. This class is over. All right. So, at the same time, the manager has a responsibility to the tenants who want the best value, like I was saying, and the best space for their money. Professional managers are therefore much more than rent collectors. They need technical expertise in marketing, accounting, finance, and construction. Property managers often specialize in one property type. So they either do apartment managing, office, retail, industrial, farm, single family, and acquire specialized knowledge of that property type. So whatever the type and management arrangement, the manager's work involves leasing, managing, marketing, and maintaining the property, right? The services that a manager provides thus can be seen to fall into three areas. There's the financial, the physical, and there's the administrative duties or obligations that the property manager might have. Specific functions, duties, and responsibilities are determined by the management agreements, although most agreements will include at least the following functions. So one of the functions is how often should you report the profit and loss. So the financial status of the property. Should it be weekly, monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, annually, whatever it is, it will say in the agreement. Okay? It will also tell you what's your budget in the agreement, what's your budget with the funds that you receive. How much can you set aside for certain things, right? And how much the owner expects to receive, what percentage, right? This we already covered in a different chapter. What is income, what is expenses, what is cash flow, right? Capital expenditures, these are big expenditures. Capital, when you see the word capital, even though capital means money, right? But when you see capital expenditures, means big expenditures. Like, for instance, replacing the roof is something expensive. Doing the whole siding of a 100-unit apartment building is expensive, right? So when it's something big, capital. So capital expenditures, we're talking about large investments or renovations or expansions. And because they are large-scale projects, usually they're spread over several years. So that means that, for instance, the roof is $50,000. Can we do it tomorrow? Well, looking at the numbers, probably not. Can you do it next year? Looking at the numbers, probably not. Can you do it in 5 years? Well, now it makes sense. So we're going to divide the 50,000 divided by the 5 years, and every single month we take a portion of it, portion of the income, we take it out and set it aside. You guys understand? So that is the 5-year mark. The 5-year goal is to replace the roof, right? We know that a roof is valid for, or his life expectancy, its life expectancy is 5 years, or 20 years, or 30 years. So it's easy for us to know, okay, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, we need to have the money for this, right? Something that we should learn with our own lives, like this is what I need to do, right? And it's going to take me 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever. And we should be putting that money aside, like it's the emergency money, right, for capital expenditures. But do we do that? Most people don't, right? So, in fact, most people are better at managing other people's property than their own, right? Diana's like, yep. Cash reserve. Hey, Ruth, good morning. Stacy, good morning. All right. So, bless you. So as far as cash reserve, it's another fund that we set aside again for, we call it like the petty cash, right? And we do for things like variable expenses, in this case supplies, redecorating, small repairs, right? Not large scale repairs, like we said, that's capital expenditures, but putting some money aside towards variable expenses. Alana, good morning. All right, we're getting a lot of people today. Great. Alexis, don't do it again, okay? Thought you were going to type again, good morning. You already said good morning. All right. So the property manager, whose full responsibilities include maintaining and managing the property in accordance with the owner's financial goal, includes seeing that the property is properly rented and tenanted, right? The manager may use the services of a leasing agent. Pay attention to this. Manager may use the services of leasing agents whose sole concern is to rent the space. So there's a property manager to manage the property, and they can hire individuals for specific duties. Like a leasing agent, all they do is lease. So therefore, they have to be a licensed person, right? A licensed real estate salesperson in order to lease units. That's all they do. Okay. In some situation, some of the manager's tasks may be performed by the leasing agents, and renting the property includes the following tasks, regardless of which party actually performing them. Controlling vacancies. If you guys don't know what vacancy is being empty, vacant, available, right? Nobody wants a room or an apartment to be available, whether it's a hotel, motel, if it's your apartment buildings, right? You don't want them to be vacant. So we need to figure out why we have vacancies, right? Are the rents too high? Maybe too low? You know how people get skeptical? Oh, that's too cheap. Said no one ever, right? But it could be a reason. Ineffective marketing. This is one of them. But this is probably, these two are probably the most important ones. Management quality. How are you managing the building, right? Poor tenant retention program. You're not doing anything to keep your tenants, right? Image and appearance problems and high market vacancy rates. So the reason why I said these two usually are the biggest problem when it comes to property management and when it comes to any type of business, right? The reason why I say these are the most important is because, look, I've worked in the restaurant business, and I don't know if you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but when somebody goes to a restaurant, right, the food could be okay. But if the service is exceptional, right, you go back, right? If the food is great and the service sucks, I think a lot of people, like, doesn't matter what the food tastes like at this point. It could be the manna, the heavens. It could be the best food ever, right, of the gods, right? But if service sucks, you don't want to go there, right? So out of all these, people will pay whatever price. People will pay whatever price if everything else is in place. If there's good service, right? There's a good, in this case, retention program. People will stay there forever, right? Unless there's a challenge in our lives that makes us move, right? Or desire to move, right? Most people will stay, right? So image and appearance problems, of course. right? And if it's the market, we talked about this in chapter 15 when we talked about the real estate market, could also be factors like the whole area, people are leaving, so there's a high vacancy rate in the area. So successful managers, they will look at these factors and take steps to limit or counteract their effects. Marketing, obviously, how are you doing your market? This is simple. I'm going to go right through. How are you doing the marketing? Billboard advertising, brochures, meetings and presentations, networking. What is most effective for this kind of property? That's the most thing. For this kind of property, what kind of tenants are you trying to get to? So having all these available is great, but again, what type of client are you looking for what type of property? So there has to be a mix of advertisement that are effective for that niche, right? Setting the rents. Guys, how do you think we set the rents? Anybody has an idea of how we set the rent values? How do we figure out, hey, let's charge $1,000 for this unit? Let's charge $2,000 for this unit. Anybody? Let me know in the chat real quick. All right. Location. Alana says location. Okay, let's see. Sam, according to the market. Okay. Juan for the win. Go right here. We check the rents around you. So yes, it has to do with the market, Sam. Perfect, right? It has to do with the market. But you're going to check the rents around you. We're going to do, we're setting the rents. We're going to do a CMA. And Belanda, you're also right. So this is to YouTube. You're also right. All right, so let's piggyback on Sam's and Belanda's answer. Sam said according to the market. Belanda said location. So obviously, you want to do what Juan said. You're going to check the location, the rents around you within the particular location. We're going to do a comparative market analysis in order to figure out what the rent rates will be. So we have to spy on the competition. We're going to go see, hey, this apartment building over here is charging $1,000 for a one bedroom, right? And the amenities that they have garage, right? They have a clubhouse, they have this, they have that. Let's check what they have. If this one's charging $1,000 and I find 2 or 3 more that are charging more or less the same for a one bedroom, right? Then my rates should not be far off from those rates. Does that make sense? So we have to see what we offer, what they offer, and that's how we set the rental rates. It's called comparables of the properties around you within the same market, within the same location. All right? Very good. Selecting the tenants. Like I said before, your marketing has to be for that specific tenant for that particular property. You're not going to put a residential tenant in a commercial building, right? That's obvious. You're also not going to put manufacturing in a commercial building. That's obvious as well, because most of manufacturing has to be industrial areas, right? We're not talking about a small clothing store that does their own thing, right? We're talking about large-scale manufacturing. You don't bring it to a strip mall, for instance, right? So you need to know the type of tenant that you have. You got to make sure it's suitable for your tenants, and your tenants are suitable for the property. Collecting rents. Well, that's easy, right? In order to collect rents and to make sure that it doesn't fail, one of the things we should do is what? I mean, rents could always fail, right? That's regardless of the situation. But what is one of the things that we should do to almost guarantee that we'll receive rents? Anybody? Secure deposit. Okay. Tiana says lease. Juan for the win again. Wow. Well, it's easy for you, I guess. In the business, right? So We do the security deposit. We do a lease, like Tiana said. Background check, one of the things. So Nate says Section 8. Guaranteed. First of the month, boom. And put on a lease something about late fees. There you go. Like, people don't ignore late fees. I had a tenant a few years ago that he knew that the fee was $100. I changed all my leases because of him, right? He knew my fee was $100, the late fee, right? So after the 8th, and I changed that as well, after the 8th, $100. Here comes the 15th, 16th, 17th, and he still did not pay. So we knock on the door like, hey, what's up? He goes like, well, don't I already have to pay the $100 fee? And I'm like, yeah. All right, so I'll pay you with the next rent, or I'll pay you whenever. It's already $100 on it. I'm like, these people, those are not the exact words I used, but these people, unbelievable, right? Just because the late fee's already there, let's wait a little bit longer, right? The landlord does not need the money. Like, who cares if they have a mortgage to pay or other late fees that they have to pay as well? It does not matter, right? And that's how they treated things. So after that particular tenant, I changed. Danny's laughing. After that particular tenant, I changed everything, right? I told you guys, I know. So I changed everything to have a per diem fee, right? So guys, collecting rents. One of the things, background check. The second thing is a lease, right? Have a strong lease. But also verify the previous landlord. Call them up. Say, hey, how is this tenant? Right? There could be good news, could be bad news. Maybe they're just moving. Sam says it only happens to Bruno. Yeah, right? Like you did not have tenants. So anyway, make sure you have that. Make sure you do the background check, credit check, call the previous landlord. If they're employed, which hopefully they are, call their employer. Figure it out. Is this person really employed? We're just doing a verification of employment. There's nothing wrong with that. And if you follow these steps, then most likely you will guarantee that the rents will be collected, right? There's always room for, life, because life happens. That's what I usually say, life happens. There's always room for that, where you have a job and tomorrow you don't. I mean, look at 2020, right? There's always a chance for that. But do the best you can. Also, systems of notices and records. So what are notices and records? We'll talk about it more when we get to the state portion, right? Starting tomorrow. We're going to go over what is required in the state as far as notices. Sometimes we send notices for somebody that failed to pay. In certain states, no notice is required. Oh, you didn't pay? Straight to court. That's it. And now you have to pay me the rent, the late fee, the court fee, the attorney fee, the why are you still here not paying fee. Like, we'll put all the fees there and they have to pay. It's either that or we move forward. All right? So if they're disturbing the peace, like if they're disturbing the other, not ludicrous, we're talking about tenants disturbing the other tenants, for instance, or neighbors or whatever. So you can give them a notice. Depending on the state you're in, that notice will be a 3-day notice. Like, it's either you calm down or we're going to start an eviction process because you're breaching the terms of the lease and so on. Okay? Maintaining tenant relationships, obviously, most important thing is to communicate regularly with tenants, to respond properly and satisfactorily to maintenance and service requests. Again, good management will keep them coming back. Okay? Good management will keep on coming back. Enforce the rules and lease terms consistently and fairly. So that's one of the things that I started doing, where in the beginning I was like, whatever, right? No problem. Like, let's help. I'm the person, as far as I know, I'm one of the persons that helps the most. If I can, I'll do it. If I can't, I'll figure out a way to do it. But I try to help as much as I can, right? That's just my way of being. So in the beginning, and then I got a property manager that was worse than me in terms of helping. So in the beginning, Okay, there's rules in the lease, right? I'll be like, okay, no problem. Like, okay, whatever. Very, very like everything, like peace and love, no problems, right? But then after certain things happen, like the promoter guy that took advantage of it, um, after certain things like that, then I started enforcing the rules that I set in the lease, right? So it's not that I'm not going to help, but communicate with me. There's good communication. So this is both to the tenants and the tenants with the landlord. There's good communication. I have no problem in helping out. But for the most part, we immediately activate whatever the rules and lease terms are. Okay. We also have to comply with relevant laws. So ADA, we talked about it as well. Fair housing, Equal Credit Opportunity Act, all that stuff, right? Means treating everybody properly, equally, regardless of their race, color, religion, national origin, disability, familial status, gender, right? So we need to treat everybody fairly. All right. Maintenance objectives, routine maintenance, preventive maintenance, corrective maintenance, keep on going. These are all basic stuff that we already kind of covered. Risk management, we had a whole chapter on risk management, right? Which is reducing the risk or avoiding the risk altogether or accepting the risk. There are some things we can't get away from, so we have to deal with them, right? So we talked about avoidance in that chapter, reduction, transference, retention. Now, security and safety. So obviously, we are responsible to make sure that everything is secure. Sprinkler systems, fire doors, smoke alarms, that all the tenants are safe, right? Insurance, also part of risk management. Make sure everything is insured against specific risks like theft, vandalism, illness, burglary, illness, accident, machinery damage, and so on. Some of these, by the way, some of these are given as a responsibility to the tenants. Like all my tenants have to have renter's insurance, right? So renter's insurance will cover the majority of these right here. Renter's insurance. Like we cover the building and the common areas as an example, right? That's what we say here. The building and common areas. But whatever happens inside from your door in, it's your responsibility. So we're looking for renter's insurance. Okay. There's workers' comp, fire and hazard. We covered this the other day. Flood coverage is common sense. I think you guys know. Contents, I just told you, renter's insurance. Consequential loss, so loss in business. Surety bonds, we talked about it as well in risk management. Okay. We are on page 384. Handling of trust funds. Question. What is this? Trust funds. Who can tell me? Trust funds. Anybody? What is trust fund? What does it mean, handling of trust funds? Who can tell me? We've covered at least 3 times already since chapter 1. So what is handling trust funds? Danny says rent. Sam says security deposit. YouTubers, what do you guys say? We got 8 people watching. YouTubers, what do you say? Celine says money that belongs to another person. Right. Because that's what it says underneath. Great. But what does it mean, handling of trust funds? Great, but you're in charge of it. So what type of money would that be? So Sam already wrote security deposit, right? So why would security deposit, Sam, why would security deposit be part of handling trust funds? Yep, so in escrow. So again, perfect. We put it in escrow, which is a separate bank account. Perfect. So you don't mix with yours. Perfect. You guys are doing great so far. See what we got. Let me show you guys, everybody. All right. So we have rent is yours. So that's why I did not qualify this one, Danny. Rent is yours. Security deposit belongs to somebody else. So money that belongs to another person goes into trust or escrow account, right? So we put in a separate account. Okay. And you cannot mix it with our money because it does not belong to us. It belongs to other people, right? Now, Jackie said escrow, perfect. Now, if it belongs to other people, do you guys remember the rules for money that belongs to other people? Anybody? Rules for money that belongs to the people. We cannot mix with our money. What is that called? Mixing money. Commingling. Very good. So, the lady said commingling would be mixing money. What about if I use the money? What is it called? Got it. You got it. Come on. Starts with a C as well. By using other people's money. So commingling is mixing the funds. What about using the funds that belong to other people? We mix it with ours, and now it's called. Jackie says fraud. One says enjoying. You guys are terrible. Balanda says stealing. Okay. All right, guys. So the correct terms are commingling for mixing funds, and for using the funds, it's called conversion. Because now we converted what was somebody else's, right, to be ours. Because we can only use what's ours, so we converted. Like I said, all right. So we have commingling and conversion. Commingling and conversion. Make sure you have that written down. Commingling is mixing other people's money with our money. Commingling. Conversion is using that money. So yes, it's fraud. It's called stealing. Some people will enjoy it. One, yes. All right, let's go to management agreement. What are we're going to have in the management agreement? We already described, we already laid it out, but the management agreement is going to identify the people involved. Management agreement will identify the people that are involved, the parties, right? So there's the landlord, which is the owner of the building. They'll say, hey, I'm hiring you, the property manager, to do this, that, and that. So they're going to have a specific authority, your responsibilities, the objectives of me hiring you, what I expect from this property, right? The compensation you're going to receive, and the terms of the agreement. All right, so Nadia, conversion, isn't that to change something? Yes, you just changed, you converted from being other people's money to being money that you use. See, they were supposed to be separate. Let's go back to the conversion thing. They're supposed to be separate from your money. They're supposed to be in an escrow account, separate, right? But you mixed it with yours, and not only did you mix, could have been a mistake, right? Or the timeline, like you had the 5 business days, for instance, and you did not deposit it within the 5 business days. But now, not only that, you're now using it. So you converted from being other people's money to being money that you could personally use, and did it. So it's called conversion. So commingling is the mixing, conversion is the usage. All right. Now, property managers are considered general agents. So general agents. Do you guys remember the difference between universal agents, general agents, and single agents? Right? Or limited agent? Can anybody tell me in the chat? And Jackie, yes, that's why you should give the money to the broker right away. Yep. Can anybody help me with this? General agents, what's the difference between universal, general, and single or limited agents? All right, universal agent representing both. And that's disclosed dual agent. Anybody else? Universal, general, and single. Nobody? YouTubers watching, anybody? Universal agents, general agents, or single or limited agent? Does anybody remember? All right, Jackie wrote universal agent, attorney in fact. Maybe. Okay. Single or special agent or limited agent is the same, so yes. Jackie, what could it be? All right, Sam just wrote universal, you have full powers. Full powers for what? Anybody? And Jackie wrote, single agent would be concerned with one principle. Yes, we'll be concerned with one principle. But could be, any of these could be one principle. Any of these could be one principle. Okay, so I'll explain better in a second. All right, so full powers to act on behalf of the owner, right? Behalf of the owner, perfect. So universal agent, guys, universal agent, not on behalf of the owner, but on behalf of whoever hired them, because agency means you're hired by someone. Universal agent, that means you have full powers to represent somebody else as long as it's to the best of their ability. It could be a power of attorney that gives you full powers. It could be a living trust, right? For instance, that gives you full powers to work on behalf of somebody else. Then there's general agent. General agent has some powers, not full powers. Like a property manager here, they handle a lot of stuff, right? They handle a lot of stuff for somebody else. We talked about it. We talked about budgeting, renting, hiring employees, firing employees, contracting for services, but they cannot sell the building without the owner's authority. They don't have like full authority, right? And then there's special, limited, or single agency where you're being hired for that one specific capacity only. So if you are limited, in your capacity, you are special or single agent. Usually we find this when you're either representing a landlord just for renting purposes, representing the seller just for selling purposes, representing the buyer just for buying purposes, or representing a tenant, again, just for renting purposes. It's that one specific capacity only, so you're limited. It's a special agency or single agency for that particular capacity only. Property managers are general managers because they perform some or all of the ongoing tasks and duties of operating the property. So your agreement is going to come with COLD, right? Care, obediency, accounting, loyalty, and disclosure. So it's going to come with COLD, right? And the agreement must include names of the parties, property description, how long this is going to last, this relationship, the purpose, what the owner wants, the responsibilities, what is the manager's authority, manager's responsibilities, budgeting, allocation of costs. So we already talked about all this. I'm just showing you how it lays out in the management agreement. Reporting, compensation. The only thing that matters in this whole agreement is how much you're going to get paid, nothing else, right? The equal opportunity statement where the manager cannot discriminate at all. And that's it. That's your management agreements. We're also going to have something talking about the rights, duties, and liabilities. So what are the rights of the landlords? What are the duties of the property manager? And then liabilities. So for the landlords, real quick, they have the right to receive rents. My property, it's my money. So I have the right to receive rents according to the agreement and to receive the premises in the specified condition at the end of the agreement. So that's my right as a landlord. I hired you and I'll let you be. You handle the property. Once this agreement is over, I want the property in the promised condition. So I have the right to get the property back. You manage for 5 years, for 10 years, whatever we agree. Okay. The manager, depending on the degree of authority that was granted by the agreement, right? The management may have the right to hire and fire, enter into contracts, and perform routine management tasks without interference of the owner. So there are some powers that are given to you where you do not need the principal to give an okay. That's why you are a general agent versus a universal agent or a special or limited agent. This is a sample of the agreement right here. If you guys want to go through it, just lays out what we just said. And we're going to stop here for a little bit. All right, leasing considerations. You guys know, we are on page 389. Danny, is that right? All right, just want to make sure. So we are on page 389, and we're going to talk about leasing considerations. So here we're going to slow down a little bit. So let's talk first about lease types. There's different types of leases. I'm going to start with this one, which is the most complicated to understand. And we talked about it under estates. I don't know if you guys remember estates. We talk about freehold estates. We talk about less than freehold estates. And one of them was a leasehold estate, and it's called estate for years. Now, if it's an estate for years, guys, what kind of rental agreement is this? Anybody remember? What type of rental agreement is this? Let me know if you guys remember this one. Okay, Sam says for time to time. Leonard says for a certain period of time. Danae says time to time. Zeline says for at least 3 years. Lula says there's a start date and an end date. So Lula for the win, even though Clonard was kind of correct that for a certain period of time, so a definite period of time. But the key thing to remember is that there's a start and an end, which creates that certain or definite period of time. So in the estate for years, it's for a definite, or as Clonard said, certain, that works, certain, right, period of time. There's a start and there's an end. Okay, so there's a start date and there's an end date. Usually I call it check-in, check-out. So the same thing as going to Airbnb, hotel, right? A resort. It's the same thing. There's a start date, there's an end date. And it could be for years, it could be for months, it could be for weeks, it could be even for days. The key feature of an estate for years, again, is that there's a check-in, check-out, a start, an end. And we know that up front. So the same thing as going to a hotel. You book the hotel for those 2 days, 3 days, 10 days, whatever it is, right? You book that period of time already with an end in sight. So we know it's going to end. That's the estate for years, right? So again, what gets confusing about it, I said it before, I'm saying it again, is this. It's the 4 years. So you think it's going to be for a long period of time. But no, it could be for weeks or days. Okay, so estate for years. The one that's from time to time, so Sam and Sanady, the one that's from time to time, it's called periodic. It's the week to week, the month to month, right? The year to year. The fact that it automatically renews on that same period. So if I'm on a month to month, do we have an end date? If you rent month to month, do we have an end date? So no. Instead of being a certain period, it's periodic. So automatically renews. So it's from period to period. And so it does not have a definite period of time. So automatically renews. So the biggest difference is estate for years. There's a definite period of time. We start now, we end at a certain date. The periodic estate or lease is self-renewable. There's no end in sight. It renews in the same blocks of time. So every 30 days, same blocks of time, or every week if it's a weekly rate, same blocks of time, automatically renews. As long as you pay and as long as I don't ask for the apartment, automatically renews. No end in sight. This one has a specific end. This one does not. So make sure you got that clear. Then we have at will and at sufferance. You guys remember at will, the name already says, I'm willing to have you there. So there might not be any definite period of time at all. So like usually verbal leases are at will. There's no end in sight. It automatically renews as long as you pay, something like a periodic, the month to month and so on, right? It's at will. I have no problem with you staying there. And then there's at sufferance. So the landlord is suffering. The landlord's in pain because they need the apartment or the money, right? And you're not letting go of either one. Not giving money, right? And you're not leaving the apartment. So you're there without my consent. So at sufferance, you're there without landlord's permission. At will, you're there with permission. At sufferance, you're there without permission. So if you rent an apartment for 1 year, at the end of 1 year, we do not renew, you cannot automatically assume that you can stay. It's the same thing as going to a hotel. If you book for 3 days, on the third day, right, by 12 o'clock you should have left. I don't need to call you. It was already preset that you should have left. You guys understand? So if you overstay, right, it's called a holdover period. If you overstay, you're there without my permission. That's called tenancy at sufferance. All right, any questions? YouTubers, Zoomers, any questions? All right, so we're going to go into gross, talking about different types of leases. One of them is the gross lease. Now, gross lease, I want you guys to remember your paycheck, okay? Your paycheck. Isn't it gross? Like that the full amount that you're supposed to get paid is not what you take home, right? There's deductions, right? It sucks, right? Because what we take is the net. after all the deductions? Well, when you make a payment to the landlord, they don't get paid the $1,500. Let's say your rent is $1,500. They don't get paid the $1,500. They collect the $1,500 check, right? But then they have to pay the taxes, the insurance, the maintenance. So those are the deductions. And at the end of the day, your $1,500 could represent $200 for the landlord. Okay, because there's all these expenses to pay. So the landlord pays for all the property operating expenses. That's a gross lease. For you, the tenant, a single payment, no worries about it. For the landlord, it's a single payment, but we have all the worries. Taxes, insurance, maintenance, right? So that's the standard. You'll find this in residential. The net lease is where we share expenses, or the tenant is responsible for all the expenses, the property expenses. And that will be a triple net lease. So a net lease is $1,000 rent plus a portion or all of the taxes, the insurance, and the maintenance. We find this mainly in office spaces or industrial. So again, gross, fixed rent. Net is rent plus some or all of the property expenses. And here comes percentage lease. I don't know if you guys remember this, but percentage lease is where I get a percentage of your business, right? Percentage of your business. So the rent is not fixed. It depends on the income generated by the tenants. So a percentage lease is where I'm betting on you. We find this mainly in retail. So if you go to a shopping mall, right? Usually that's the type of agreement that they have there. Your rent is $5,000 a month, but we want 5% of everything you make above $30,000, for instance. So if you make $30,000 this month in gross income, right, this month, I get anything above, so $31,000, I get 5% of the 1,000. You make $35,000, I get 5% of those 5,000. You make $50,000, I get 5%, that $20,000 difference. So anything you make above a certain amount that we agree to, I get a percentage. See, I'm betting on you as a landlord. I'm betting on your business, so I'm charging you a lower rent than anybody else's, right? But I expect your business to be so profitable that I make way more money as a percentage than I would have made if I charged you a net or a gross lease. Does that make sense? So percentage leases is I get a percent of your business. Graduated lease means the rental rate increases at specified times. So look, for the first 6 months, your rent is $500. For the next 6 months, your rent is $750, right? For the 1 year after that, your rent is going to be at, we already pre-agreed, right, to these increases along the way. It could also be, a graduated lease could also be based on CLI. So that, I'm sorry, a variable lease could also be based on CLI, cost of living index. So there's the graduated, where we put a set increase at specified times. It could be a cost of living index lease, where, hey, inflation went up by 3%, you got to pay an additional 3% in rent over the next year. You guys got it? So these are the different types of leases that we have. If you guys have any questions, interrupt me, please, and ask the questions. All right. Now we're going to talk about owner and leased inclusions. So the lease should set forth items that are excluded or included in the leased property. So what can you use? What can you not use? What is yours and what will never be yours? What if you install something and then it becomes mine? So if you guys remember, we talked about real property, we talked about personal property, right? For renting, certain things could become real property, meaning could become fixtures and belong to the owner versus the tenants. So a residential lease may include built-in appliances such as dishwashers, right? But excludes the freestanding ones, like a refrigerator. Furniture may be included or excluded, and an issue for the landlord is the cost of maintenance. So I can also exclude the maintenance. I can tell you that the maintenance is on you. Again, depending on the type of lease that we have. If a refrigerator is not included or it does not have to be maintained by the property manager, everything should be there. What's included, what's excluded, what's our responsibility, what is not. Ownership also relates to insurance policies, right? One can only insure what he owns. So if a property item is destroyed by fire, an owner's policy will not provide any coverage for an item that's not included in the lease as belonging to the property. That's why tenants should have their renter's insurance, okay? The lease should also have clear rules. This is very important you guys understand right here. The lease should have clear rules about making alterations. If the tenant is not satisfied with an item that is part of the property, the lease may provide for the tenants to make changes only with permission or with the obligation to return the premises to their original condition or on termination, or that any alterations made fixtures become property of the landlord. So the lease will be very clear. Whatever you want to do, you either need permission or without permission becomes automatically part of the real estate, therefore belongs to the landlord. There's one type of lease though that doesn't matter what you do, it never belongs to the landlord, and that's called one that will have trade fixtures. If we're talking about trade fixtures, what type of lease is this? You can tell me. If we're talking about trade fixtures, what type of lease is this? What type of tenant, I'm sorry, is this? It talks about trade fixture. What kind of tenants do you have? Anyone? Trade fixture. Tools of the trade. Tools of the trade. It involves what? What type of lease is this? What type of tenant do we have? Tools of the trade. Okay. So, one of the things that's important you guys to remember is that every time you see trade, it involves a business. Tools of the trade, it involves a business. It could be commercial. It could be industrial. Never residential. Trade fixtures, tools of the trade. So we're talking about in the salon, the sinks that they install, the chairs that they have there. If it's a restaurant, they have the barbecue pits, stuff like that. Here I have TVs installed all over, right? So these are tools of the trade. It belongs to the business, and the landlord knows already when it comes to something that's a trade fixture. The landlord knows up front that whatever I install, I intend to remove later. Okay? For residential, let me go back to this. For residential, we need permission from the landlord. We need permission from the landlord in order to be able to install things or alter things. In commercial or industrial, it is generally accepted that for me to conduct my business, I need to install certain things. As long as it's approved by the town, the landlord should not have much say or input in it because he did rent it to me as a school, or to me as a barbershop, or to me as a mechanic, whatever it is. They know we will install things that we will remove later with the intent of removing later. They belong to the tenant. Okay? So again, every time you see the word trade and fixture right next to it, right, trade fixtures, it belongs to a business. Gotta remember that. reversionary rights of the owners. Reversionary rights of the owners. You guys remember this? Reversionary rights? Anybody remembers this? Reversionary rights? Anyone? Reversionary rights? Nobody? Reversionary rights of owners. Do you guys remember fee determinable ownership? If I give you the property as long as you do something or don't do something, I give you the property for as long as you're alive, for instance, a life estate. At the end of the term, the property comes back. You guys remember that? It reverts back to me. So what do you think in the lease is the reversionary right? In a lease, the reversionary right, Lula wrote, once the tenant defaults on the property. What about when the lease ends? You are right on what you said, Lula. If you default on the property, I can go to through an eviction process to get the property back. I understand that. But what about when the lease ends? Same thing as a hotel, motel, resort, Airbnb, whatever you want to call it. At the end of the lease, whether it's 3 days or it's 1 year, at the end of the lease, I have the right to get the property back. Just like a life estate, it's a future right. For now, the property is yours, but when the lease ends, it reverts back to me. The property is yours as far as possession. I'm sorry, possession. You have all those rights. You can do whatever you want. You can possess the property. You can exclude people from the property. You can enjoy the property, right? Use it in any legal manner. You can never sell the property, but you have all the other rights. But once the lease is over, it reverts back to me, the landlord. Returns, correct. All right. Landlord's rights and responsibilities. Landlord's rights and responsibilities. Just because the property is mine, okay? Just because the property is mine, can I do whatever I want with it? Or just because you are the tenant, can you do whatever you want with it? Like you're paying, so you have all these rights? No. So it's generally accepted, right? We talked about this general, right here, Universal Residential Landlord Tenant Act. We talked about it before. It is generally accepted across the board that the landlords have certain rights. One of them is the right of reversionary rights. The property comes back to me. I also have the right to get into the property for repairs and maintenance of the property, right? But the lease... Hey, Carrie. Carrie's just joined on YouTube. And not the best instructor ever, but thank you. And she says because of me, she passed the state exam. And now making a lot of money, right? Say yes. You missed the classes that much? She just joined the class. Like, she hasn't been in class for like, what is it, 2 months already? 2 months or 3? You closed 4 deals already. Jeez. Can I be your student? Okay. Very good. Congratulations. All right. So the lease will have to stipulate, guys. We'll have to stipulate what what is the allowance or what kind of rules we have to set in place for me to visit the property as a landlord. What's my limitation? I have the right to go there for repair and maintenance, but can I just walk in? No, I have to give you some type of notice. So, for me not to give notice, let's say, it has to be an emergency. Like it's on fire, right? There's a fire. I have to go in. There's a water damage. Now I have to call you because water damage, right? Fire, no questions asked. I'm going in. Water damage, I'm gonna try to reach you, see if you're there, right? The tenant gives consent to enter. The landlord enters during normal business hours only after giving notice, proper notice, to either make the repairs or show the property to prospective tenants, purchasers, or contractors. If the tenant abandoned or surrendered the property, or if there's a court order that allows me to enter. So I cannot just walk in just because as a landlord, right? A lot of people don't understand that. Likewise, the landlord has the right to expect prompt payment of rent and adherence to building rules. At the end of the lease term, the landlord has the right to retake possession of the premises, and in case of tenant breach or default, the landlord has the right to pursue the remedies provided by law, such as eviction or even take possession. But those are my rights, right? But I also have responsibilities or duties, right? The landlord, very important, the landlord is required to give the property, deliver the property in a habitable condition. Okay? This one is very important. There's something called warranty of habitability, meaning that it is generally accepted, or expected, that the property is in such good condition that anybody can live there. Okay? This means that the landlord must, very least, keep the heating, cooling, electrical, and plumbing systems in good working condition, keep the floors, stairways, and railings safe and in good repair, provide pest control as needed, and repair the roof leaks and broken windows promptly. So, I cannot, what is it called, slumlord? I cannot be a slumlord. I cannot just give you a property, okay, go live there, and every time you call me, I'm like, sure, one day I'll fix. Some state laws actually give the right to the tenant to repair and deduct. That means you can do your own repairs and tell the landlord, hey, I'm taking it from the rent. If it endangers your life, health, and safety, again, if it endangers your life, health, and safety, so like any of these could, right? Endanger life, health, and safety, then I'm allowed to repair and deduct. Certain states give you that power. Yeah, Lula. Again, marina law. Tenants' right and responsibility. So tenants have rights as well, yeah? One of the rights is privacy. Like I said, I cannot just walk in the property. I cannot just walk into the property. You have the right to privacy, quiet enjoyment. Okay? Now, if the landlord fails to correct the problem that is the landlord's responsibility, like I said before, there's something called constructive eviction. We'll talk about it later. Constructive eviction, right? That allows you to move out without liability for the back rent or the unexpired portion of the lease. To refer the problem to mediation, arbitration, or small claims court, and after giving the owner written notification of emergency situation, call a professional to repair and deduct, like I said, from next month's rent. These are the rights. What are the responsibilities for the tenant? Well, they're responsible for paying the rent on time, common sense. Follow the rules and regulations that are set out by the landlord. Give a 30-day notice when terminating a month-to-month lease. Returning all door and mailbox keys when leaving the property. Leave the unit in clean condition as it was in the start of the lease. Keep the unit clean and sanitary. Dispose of all the rubbish, garbage, and other waste in a sanitary manner. Use and operate all electrical, gas, plumbing fixtures properly. Refrain from destroying or damaging the property. Prevent others from destroying and damaging the property, like visitors. and use the property and rooms only for the intended purposes. So, again, landlords have certain rights and responsibilities. Tenants have certain rights and responsibilities. This is called generally accepted terms. What I want to show you real quick is under the state law, depending on the state law, it might not say 30-day. It might say 1 month prior to the dates that the rent is due. So if the rent is due on the 5th of every month, then on the previous 5th, you should have given notice. If the rent is due on the 4th of every month, then on the previous 4th, you should have given notice. And the reason why I'm clarifying this is because here it says 30 days, right? But if we're in February, we don't have 30 days, okay? So it's a month before the rent is due. The rent is due on the 4th. The previous 4th is the term. So that's depending on state law, okay? You guys good? Give me a thumbs up if you're good. Great. Awesome. YouTubers, if you have questions, drop them also in the chat. So we're going to talk about evictions. We have something called actual eviction. Now, this one, guys, is the most common sense one. Actual eviction is the one that everybody knows. Tenant defaulted, landlord has an option, and that option is eviction. Tenant defaulted, why? Well, tenant defaulted because of lack of payment. Tenant defaulted because of noise. Tenant defaulted because of destruction. So they breached the contract in any way, shape, or form. I'm entitled now to do what's called an actual eviction. Okay? An actual eviction requires you to vacate. Now, what's important is that for us to evict someone, it has to be through a court order. Okay? We cannot just kick him out. We cannot just change the door locks. Okay? You have to go through court. Once the court issues the judgment for possession, then they allow you to take over the property because the tenant is now required to vacate, to leave. Okay? Constructive eviction. You evict yourself. So constructive eviction, you evict yourself. So the landlord is not taking you to court for you to leave. You're telling the landlord, hey, I'm out. I'm leaving. Now, in what circumstances, guys, in what circumstances do you think you can just get your stuff and leave? In what circumstances do you think you could just get your stuff and leave? Legally, without penalties. So then it says lease is up. Well, but it wouldn't be called an eviction. But yes, it's up. Bad management, okay. Sam says property's in bad condition. Tiana says when they aren't fixing anything. So correct. Constructive eviction, you leave because the property is unfit for human habitation. Remember, one of the obligations or responsibilities the landlord has is that he or she maintains the property in habitable condition. If it's unfit for a human to live there, right, then you can claim constructive eviction. You tell the landlord, listen, it was good while it lasted, but it's not working out between us. I'm out. And these are the reasons, okay? Just got to remember, if you do go for constructive eviction because they're not maintaining the property, make sure you have an attorney. That's one of the things. Make sure you put it in writing because you want to collect your security deposit, right? You want to get things back, so you want to make sure you do it the right way. Okay, constructive eviction is you evict yourself. You're telling the landlord, you made it very difficult for me to live here. So instead of me breaching the agreement, you, landlord, breach the agreement. Okay, because it goes both ways. There's rights and responsibilities for both sides. Okay. Questions here? Questions? You guys are making this chapter go fast. So I get a million questions. YouTubers, do you have any questions before I move forward? All right, Lula has a question coming through. Is tenant insurance mandatory? So tenant insurance is not mandatory as a state requirement. For me, it is. As a landlord, I require you to have it so it protects you, protects your assets. Because my insurance, the homeowner's insurance, protects the property and whatever I have in the property, but not the tenant. So I don't want you to sue me and lose. I want to protect you in case something happens. So I ask you to have that insurance. If there's any theft, if there's any vandalism, right? Again, my insurance covers me as a landlord, as the owner of the property. So tenant insurance, which is like 10, 15 bucks, right? 10, 15 bucks a month, doesn't hurt you, right? 10, 15 bucks a month, and it protects you. Everything you have there. Fine. Sam says, a house in front of mine caught fire because the kid was playing with fireworks. And these people in Carteret are terrible, I'm telling you. And they didn't have tenant insurance, so they lost a lot. Yep. Juan, funny, same questions I had. Can you enforce this? Can we enforce what? That the tenant has it? Can we force the tenant to have it? If it's part of the lease and they don't have one, and you find out that they don't have it, they don't give you a certificate, or there's no renewal, you can evict them. It's part of the lease. Yeah, so I can enforce anything that's in the lease. As long as it does not go against human rights, let's say, right? As long as it's not something against human rights, then I can enforce it all day. Yep. Absolutely. Not when you rent a full house. When you rent anything, you should have insurance, right? But not only that, renter's insurance comes with liability protection as well. So renter's insurance comes with protection for stuff even outside of the property. So for you, you are protected. Danny, what company is good for that? It depends. I can send you a contact if you want. Right on Morris Avenue in Union. But if you want, send me a message separately, and I'll give you a contact. Okay. Usually the sale is very good with rates for the house and for tenants. We're good. All right, Juan, I think is going to type something. YouTubers, again, if you have questions regarding this, let me know. All right, Belanda's saying, I had a fire a few years back and the tenants tried suing you. Okay, and the result was? Did the tenants win or did you win? I mean, your insurance, not you. Juan saying, my parents had car and rental in the same policy. Yeah. I mean, you can always bundle. And if you bundle, it's even cheaper. So yeah. It's really not expensive, guys. Renter's insurance is like 10, 15 bucks. I don't know why people don't get it. 10, 15 bucks. And again, it becomes an umbrella insurance. So it covers more than just a house because of the liability portion. It covers more than just a house. Okay? If you deliberately cause damage outside of your property, if you deliberately do it, it won't cover. But if you cause some type of damage, right, innocently, cause some type of damage, let's say your car policy is not enough to cover, they might come after the renter's policy. So it's an addition, for an additional 10, 15 bucks, get extra coverage. Belana says car insurance company will insure you. Yep, that's what I was saying. 10 to 15 bucks a month. Okay. All right, next thing we have is termination of a lease. How can we terminate a lease? The most common termination of the lease will be expiration. It was a 1-year lease and it's now over. 1-year lease, it's now over. Simple. It was a 6-month lease, it's now over. It was a 3-day lease of this Airbnb or hotel or resort, it's now over. Performance. Any contract terminates when everybody fulfilled their obligations. It could be terminated by agreement. That means either side said, hey, listen, I want to leave. And the other side, okay, no problem, right? So if we come to a mutual agreement, we terminate the lease. Abandonment. So if a tenant leaves the property, the landlord can retake the property back, right? If they leave or abandon the premises. If it's default or breach of any of the terms of the contract, then the contract ends and we move towards eviction. That's what it is. Default or breach, right, ends the contract by either party. Default or breach by either party. So it could be a landlord breach, so we file what's called constructive eviction. It could be a tenant breach, and then that's the actual eviction that we know about. Okay. Question. Does anybody know what the word notice means? You know by now, notice. What does notice mean? In general, it doesn't have to be for leases, but what is notice? Diana, the simplest way to say it is giving you a heads up. Yep. It's a warning. It's a disclosure. It's like, hey, just so you know, right? That's what it is. Notice. Telling you in advance. Sure. Yep. Giving you a heads up. So when we talk about notice, depending on what the situation is, we might have to give some type of proper notice. So if it's a month to month, we got to give 1 month's notice. If it's a week to week, 1 week notice. If it's a year to year, it's 3-month notice usually. So you got to give a notice, a warning, a heads up. Hey, this is what's going to end the lease or renew the lease. Most of these notices must be given up front, as we mentioned. If you destroy the property, there's going to be something in the lease that tells you, hey, you destroy, you pay for it. But it could be also landlord's destruction of the property, and that will terminate the lease, right? So if you either way could terminate the lease if either party destroys the property. Condemnation. So eminent domain, if you guys remember, eminent domain is when the government says, hey, I want your property and your neighbor's property and your neighbor's property and the other neighbor's property because we're going to build a new school over here, as an example, right? So eminent domain is when the city takes your property through a process called condemnation, and obviously if the city is taking the property, the lease ends, terminates the lease. Now, foreclosure, I want you guys to pay attention to what it says here, because foreclosure does not say terminates the lease. it terminates the lease obligations. What is the difference? The difference is that in the foreclosure, the landlord was the owner. Until the foreclosure ends, they are still the owner, so you still have to pay them the rent. Once the property is foreclosed, that means it finished, completed the foreclosure, it changes ownership. So the tenant no longer has an obligation to the previous landlord. They have an obligation to the new landlord. So the lease does not terminate. As a tenant, you're allowed to stay there for a longer period of time until the lease ends, right? But the obligation to one or all the parties is over. Okay? It creates a new lease with a new owner. Death, I think it's kind of like common sense. If somebody's not around, it's tough to pay the rent. So, terminates the lease. As far as security deposit, guys, depending on the state, security deposit is going to be handled in different ways. So the procedures might be different depending on the state, right? Usually, the state law will specify how the property manager is to manage security deposits. Funds are normally held in a special trust account, right, the escrow account, and may not be used for any purpose other than the intended use, right, which is keeping it as security. Whether the deposit can earn interest or to whom that interest belongs are likewise prescribed by law. So in the state of New Jersey, as an example, you have to put in a special trust account that's strictly for this, and you must earn interest. Interest for whom? For the tenant, because it's their money, not your money. Okay, the security deposit is never, ever, ever the landlord's money. So we cannot commingle, we cannot mix. The problem is most landlords have no idea about this. Most people that buy a house with the intent of renting, most people, they say, okay, I received the security deposit, I'm going to use the security deposit. And then when another person comes in, he'll give me a security deposit and I'll give it to this old person that's moving out, the old tenant, right, that's moving out. So they're commingling the funds during the period of time, and they're converting because they're using the money for a particular purpose. Your money, when you give as a deposit, that money must be set aside and earn interest because it's not the landlord's money, it's the tenant's money that we're holding hostage. So the law prescribes when the security deposit must be returned to the tenant and under what circumstances any of it may be withheld. The contract language should clearly state the rules, among other things, governing what happens to the deposit when the lease terminates. So when we get to the state law, the state portion, we will go a little bit more specific regarding what is required from the tenant or the landlord. Okay. The Uniform Residential Landlord-Tenant Act, like I told you, is what's been pretty much accepted throughout the whole United States as the basics of landlording, right? Of renting property, the basics. And pretty much they have the same language all over regarding what a lease term is, the rental amount, security deposit, landlord's access, procedures for defaulted eviction, and the general obligations that we just spoke about for the landlord and tenant. Okay. It's gonna be a really short Monday class. Unbelievable. Not even 12 o'clock and we got 2 pages to go. You guys are really good, like you're getting everything or no questions? Or it's Monday. All right. So, management business. Sources of business, securing business, and professional development. So we already talked about all this. So you can specialize in different types of properties, residential, shopping centers, commercial, industrial, and so on. And then some people further specialize in leasing, asset management, corporate property management, resort management, so association housing, mobile home parks, office buildings. So there's all different types of property managers. And you should know what you're managing, right? And how to manage it. You have a management plan. Again, I would go a little slower and more in detail if this was the broker's course, but I know what they ask for. If you want to become a property manager, okay, there's no real course like mandated to become a property manager. The only thing that's mandated from you guys, if you want to be a property manager, is that you have a real estate license to represent somebody else. What is recommended, right, to improve your profession is that you participate in some of these programs, like the IRM or Institute of Real Estate Management offers CPM. You become a certified property management. It's just a designation. It's like you went through a course and somebody certified that you understand the basics of property management, right? BOMA and BOMI, which is the Building Owners Managers Association International, and Building Owners Managers and Owners Institute International. Not only do they give you some designations, but they're very helpful. Any of these, they're very helpful for you to network with other property managers, for you to ask questions, to hear what their challenges were. That's why you'd like to possibly be part of any of these. The NAA, NARPM, ICSC, NACM, and so on. Okay? Any questions? Told you that was quick. Questions? Questions? Alexa's like, yeah, we're done. I got it, Alexis. You don't have to put more. You got it. Got it. Have you guys been doing Quizlets and stuff? You haven't been using Quizlets? Some of you, yes? Okay. Have you been doing the review questions at the end of each chapter? Okay. I'm just saying, exam is on Saturday. You guys know that, right? 19th, exam. So we have math on Friday, exam on Saturday. The next exams will be difficult. There's Christmas, there's year, so. Celine got this face like, what? This Saturday? All right. So make sure you guys are testing. Make sure you guys are asking questions. I don't know if you've noticed in the group chats, there's a lot of people sharing questions. Make sure you put questions there. We help each other out. Okay? At least that. Tiana, for some reason, it doesn't let me enter. Yeah, reach out to me separately. I'll make sure that you get there. Okay? When people are locked away, that's all right. Locked out of everything. That's what it is. Questions, guys. Going once. Going twice. You cannot get into the practice test. Send me a message separately, and we'll figure it out. Okay. All right, guys. So if there's no questions regarding this chapter, today was supposed to be the only chapter, and there's no way for me to start another chapter because then tomorrow we have only 30 minutes of class, and then the next day is one chapter only. So, with that being said, I'm gonna let you guys go early. 12 o'clock, early lunch. that a good thing or a bad thing? I see some faces like, I don't know, should we not? Yeah, it's Monday, come on, right? All right, guys, so I will see you tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning. If you guys have any questions, please make sure you ask. It's very, very important. The exam is coming, and then comes the state exam right after. So make sure you're asking plenty of questions. It's the only way that I can guarantee you that you will pass. The only way I can guarantee that you will learn is if you ask questions, if you test yourself. Okay? So Nady, I don't have class in the evening until January 4th. No classes in the evening January 4th. All right, guys? Thumbs up. Enjoy the rest of your day. See you guys.